Welcome back to another episode with me, Small for Simplicity. Today I kind of thought I'd make a video on topic of the current economic issues. I'd like to share a few snippets of others that's made videos and then head on into my usual topic. Love and blessings to you and all that's dear to you from Scotland, and here we go.
The bubble, and then the bubble could burst. Let me show you something to kind of illustrate what we mean. I want you to look at the rise in home prices. We're going to go back to 1991 to the present. So is this another bubble, right? So you look at 91. Can you imagine if you'd been able to buy a home back then? Look at that. Wow. Nice, huh? Everything was less than $100,000. Good luck. So this thing keeps going all the way to here, right? Now we're around 6, the big, meltdown or whatever you want to call it. Boom! This thing goes down. There's the bubble, there's the burst. Uh-oh. Suddenly things are cheap again, and now it goes woo. And look at the very end here since the whole COVID thing started. Look at that. It almost looks like it's straight up, right? So now everybody's thinking, oh, that went up, it's got to go. Oh, that goes up, oh, it's got to go. And by the way, how high can they go, right? So my favorite real estate guest, bar none, is Jason Hartman, whose podcast I listen to regularly, and he's going to try and break this down for us. It's funny because I was listening to you the other day, and here's what I want you to start with. You were talking the other day as I was taking my kids out, and they were mad because I forced them to listen to you, about what it is that is actually causing the lack of inventory. And you were explaining that it was like a hedge fund kind of thing. These big giant banks or groups that are coming in and buying them all. It's not just people. Can you start there?
Rick, that's a good point. People are finding that a lot of times now they're in a multiple offer situation when they're trying to buy a house. Mm-hmm. And they're usually competing against many other buyers, traditional buyers in the market, investors in the market. But what they're mostly competing against nowadays that is frustrating them are overfunded corporations, giant companies, big hedge funds, some of them foreign. And this is really frustrating to home buyers because the American dream, isn't it supposed to be for traditional Americans? Maybe not. It's for big giant investment companies and not only American-based companies. Some of them are foreign-based as well.
So you explained as I was listening to you that they have all this money because it's there, so they have to spend it, and they're spending it on entire communities, entire neighborhoods, entire blocks. I guess the question is now, I get that. At what point does that thing go too high, and then home prices are going to come back down again?
It will get to that point, Rick, but it's not there yet. The only reason people think homes are so expensive is because they're comparing them only to one thing, the price of dollars. They're not comparing them to the price of gold or the S&P or Bitcoin or a million other assets like oil, orange juice, soybeans, etc. Priced in many of these other commodities, real estate is actually still pretty darn cheap. And that's based on the price of the house. But when you compare these commodities to the payment on the house, it looks really cheap. And that is true. Those are valid comparisons. I could share many with you, assuming I'm not sure how much time we have, probably not enough. But, priced in many other assets, many other commodities, not just dollars, housing is actually still quite cheap. I know that may sound amazing to some, but if you really look at it, it's true.
30 seconds. Are we heading for a bubble burst?
Eventually, if it keeps going like this, the market is very overheated. There's no question about it. Inventory is lacking. Lumber prices, copper prices, so many other commodities, ingredients that are used to build a house are skyrocketing in price. No question about it. But there is still a systemic housing shortage. And that shortage will take at least another year or two to get to some sort of equilibrium point. So we are a long way away from a bubble, assuming interest rates stay this low and things stay the way they are. I think we're going to see prices go up quite a bit further. But again, that's only priced in dollars.
Right. I told you he knew his stuff. Jason Hartman, as usual. Good job, my friend. We thank you very much for
Thanks, Rick.
for taking us through.
So as you can hear, they are preempting a bubble burst, and what they're not telling you is for the last 2 years, they've been giving out mortgages to students. They've been giving out $1.5 million properties to students because of the CV19 scenario. So the banks, which, may I add, when Donald Trump was in power, he printed over, what, $4.8 trillion from the top. So that's sitting in the hedge fund waiting to be allocated. And this episode is very important for you because of the next parts I'm about to show you. Because if the bubble bursts, how are you all going to pay your mortgages? Which is why I'm creating this episode. Once again, another insight into legalese. So if you can hang with me and enjoy this episode, I will show you some really insightful information on how the banksters, the criminals, are actually setting up the guys, the dumb people, ignorance, to actually fall into prey and lose everything. So this episode should help everyone realise the same information that's been floating around now since 2006 scandal. So thank you. Hang with me. Here we go.
Hello, this is Michael Tellinger, and I need to take a few minutes to talk to you about the whole banking issue and promissory notes and bills of exchange and questions that arise around that area of information. Because of my extended struggle with the banks in the Supreme Court of Johannesburg, I have come to learn a great deal about this subject and found a lot of interesting information that you will only find when you actually have to stand and represent yourself in the court against what I guess could be called the highest paid lawyers in the world that represents the banks and the banksters. One of the most important things that I've found, and the reason I'm doing this, by the way, is because I get hundreds of emails every week from people around the world asking me about the promissory notes, to explain about how to use the promissory notes and so forth. So this is why I'm doing this video, so I can put it on record for once and everyone can look at this and learn from this and be informed as you can be from what I'm going to share with you, because I'm going to try and share as much as I can with you and show you examples of the promissory notes and how they work, how to deliver them. So firstly, understand that what banks do is completely and utterly criminal. Okay. If you still think that banks are respectable, honorable corporations and companies, then you're still mistaken. Everything that banks do in today's world is basically a criminal activity, and the global banking industry is the largest organized crime syndicate in the world. They're the ones that are behind creating the laws that they force through our governments, whom they control, creating the laws that are then imposed on society, that control the judiciary, that are upheld by the judges. And often the judges are just very ignorant about what it is that they're actually upholding. So sometimes one can't even blame them. But sometimes, like in my case, it becomes very evident that the judges are paid off by the banks, especially in the case that we had against Standard Bank in South Africa, which became a very high-profile case and connected to the Ubuntu Liberation Movement and the Ubuntu political party, and it started getting a lot of heat. So sooner or later, the judge was paid off to pass or hand down a fraudulent judgment. The only way that I could protect myself is to learn from that experience. So in other words, I lost the property that I was in court for, and it was auctioned. And then what happens is, once you get a judgment against you, because remember that you can't really win. We can't really win against the banks in the court of law. Because, as I mentioned, the court and the law is set up to uphold the rights and protect the interests of the banks and the banksters. So you can't win. Although there have been a few minor wins in various courts around the world, the major wins will not come until I don't know when. But the reason for that is that if we had a major win against a bank based on the arguments that we pose in the court, that I posed myself. The fact that the bank doesn't have the original contract, and without the original contract there can be no hearing and no court case. A simple fact that should really precede any court procedure from going ahead. And the fact that the bank is no longer the owner of the property because they sold the contract to a third party, and therefore they can't come after you for money that you supposedly owe them, money that they never lent you because they create the money out of thin air. But to cut a long story short, one of the very important things that I learned was that banks accept payments in the form of bills of exchange and promissory notes. Now, this didn't come from me. It was information that was spontaneously volunteered by Advocate Shem Simon, who represented Standard Bank. This is in my second or third hearing in the Supreme Court of Johannesburg. And he just suddenly blurted out, to our surprise, for some reason that still baffles me, that Standard Bank, which means all banks, accept payment in forms of bills of exchange and promissory notes. And I suddenly went, oh my goodness, this is very important information. Because if I had known this, I would have been able to do something about it long before I got myself into the court and had to stand there, defend myself against the fraudulent and criminal arguments of the banks. So, what I then went and did is I spent quite a lot of time with our legal advisor, Raymond Dix, and we looked at the Bills of Exchange Act, the lawful act that guides the financial industry and how money works and how money is created, and guides the entire financial sector of our country, of Britain, of the United States, and so forth. Every country has got their own equivalent of the Bills of Exchange Act. In South Africa, the Bills of Exchange Act comes from the British Bills of Exchange Act, which I believe is from 1822 or 1882, I think it was. And ours is just a slight bastardization of that British Bills of Exchange Act, slanted towards the needs of the people of South Africa, or the needs of the banks that govern and control the people in South Africa. So, we created what we now use as a standard promissory note. And here's a basic example of it. We created a very nice, fancy looking promissory note. Remember that all the bills in your wallet are actually, let's say, £100 or $100. It's a bill. It's a $100 bill, right? So just like, and it's a promissory note. It's supposed to be a promise to pay. To pay what? To pay $100 on demand, or it's become a very grey area actually. So what we really in essence doing is we're not trying to find a clever way to wangle ourselves out of debt or whatever. We're using the laws and the system that was created, the corrupt and fraudulent system created by the banking fraternity and the banking cartel, to exploit and abuse and enslave humanity. We're using those same laws in our own favor, and somehow it seems to have worked. In my case, and the reason I'm sharing this with you, because I have now paid Standard Bank close to or just over 800,000 Rand with 4 different promissory notes from about June 2013 until the 12th of December, or was it 12th of October, 12th of October 2014. So over a 1.5 year period, I've paid the bank close to 800,000 Rand in promissory notes that I created. And this is, as I showed you, this is the basic standard promissory note. Now, what's important about it is the information that's written on there. To make it look really fancy, this promissory note is available on the Ubuntu Party website. You can download it and use it for yourself. There's a blank version of this available with text boxes, so you can just click on the text box and fill in your own details and your own information.
So these books are legalese dictionaries, which is known as Ballantyne's Law or Black's Law. And any of you can just Google it, look it up. This is what all lawyers have to turn to to have true understandings of things. And in this episode, I wish to share with you some insightful pieces. So first up, right, man, at the very top of the page here. In the genetic sense, a human being, whether male or female. How interesting is this, guys? So man, does that make woman less or more? Why would it be legalese just man is both, right? So all human beings, mankind, and in a narrow sense, a male human being who has reached the age of majority at least an age above puberty. And then they cite the case, as usual. Ballantyne always cites other cases which we use. That's why his books are so liked. So I wish to show with you page 112. Let me go there. 112. Mortgages. Here we go. So let me zoom out a little. See. There you go. Perfect. Perfect. Right. So mortgages. In the ancient sense, an estate in mortu vadio, or dead pledge, at common law. Why would they call it a dead pledge? You know what that is? A qualified estate under a condition conveyed, given by way of security for performing of an obligation, usually one for a payment of money. In the modern sense, a security of lien for the performance of an obligation, a conveyance of a property to secure a performance of some obligation, the conveyance to do void on the due performance of the obligation. Very interesting. That's why police mortgage you when you get pulled over. Mortgageable properties, properties in which can be subject to mortgage, the term usually being used in reference to personal property or cattle. You see it, cattle? That's why they call you guys. Mortgage bonds, a bond which is secured by a mortgage. Bond, interesting. Mortgage clause, some mortgage clauses. Mortgage company, a loan company. Mortgage coupon bond. Isn't that interesting? A coupon would be in there, in legalese. A mortgage deed, a deed giving by way of security a mortgage. So it's not a deed for a property, right? You seeing this? It's a deed for mortgage. The mortgage, the person to whom the mortgage is made. The mortgage is held to be a purchaser within the means of a statute. Entitlement. Entitlement is actually inside you, because it should be entitlement in language, right? So entitlement, the widow of the alien to which some rights of her husband's property is resided. Are you seeing? And this is all legalese, right? So anyway, I wish to skim on a little bit more. I'm not trying to bore too much of this. Where's common. Hopefully that one. Yep, common. Right, so common. The word common. Now I go here because if you think about what law supersedes all other laws, it's common law. So the word common, a right, otherwise known as a profit or prédieu, to be exercised in the land of another. Let me click the button so you can see the full page. Sorry. To be exercised in the land of another, accompanying with particular in the profit of the soil, or a right to take part of the soil or procedure of the land, better known in the popular sense as an area open for common and public use, for the conveyance, accommodation, and pleasure of the inhabitants of the municipal. In earlier days of this country, the common was a place of pasture and the benefit of the inhabitants of the town and the municipality. Isn't this very interesting? That one term. Is this why the banksters have the bankster scam underway? Do you know the law? Okay, so jumping on, some law stuff for you. So a law nation, look, international law, interesting, law of nation. Law of nature, natural law, in other words, common law, God's law. Law of payment, the law relating to performance of a contract. Okay, law of retaliation, very interesting. Law of ships, flags, see flag law. Law of the case. Law of the flag. Law of the land. thanks for sticking with me through this episode. So I know it's a little bit of legalese, but these are really interesting dictionary meanings which hold up in all the statutory laws, all common law laws, and not only that, it was written by one of the greatest judges which analysed all laws across all countries. Staying on point, I want to highlight this because the word check is actually spelt like with a Q, but in legalese it's referred to as check, as in C-H-A-C-K. So let me share you this from the legalese dictionary, right? So payments of a check, right? Check yourself, check. The act of drawing bank and handling over money in the amount in which check is drawn, and they spell it check the promissory note, to the payee or the endorser, or in the giving of the payment of the endorser somehow in the lieu of cash, often a credit of his account at the bank of which the amount of the check, acceptable unconditionally by the payee or the endorser. While the phrase to pay in ordained parley may seem to connote only payment of a third party. Get it? Third party. Third parties can't pay. Contracts are only between two, not three. And contract law. Moving on, right? So let me go. While the phrase to pay in ordained parlance may seem to connote only payments to a third party, as a matter of law, a bank does pay a check drawn on its own favour. That is to say, it charges the same against the account of the depositor and causes the check to argue the bank's own funds. Very interesting. Now, I want to tap on a bit of what Michael Tellinger was saying, so I'll show you the legalese definition of a promissory. Here we go. So this page, promissory note, a contract in writing for payment of money, usually with the added feature of negotiabilities. And this refers to many cases here, like a term used interchangeably with note, more cases. A term well understood as indicated a negotiable note. Why would it need to be the same power as money?
System. We have an estate, we have a Sestwi KV estate connected to our birth certificates, and everything is prepaid. Tell that to your pensioner friends. Everything is prepaid. All of our utilities are already prepaid. The utility companies are fraudulent. How many pensioners go to the post office to pay with that little stub? Next time you get a utility bill, try this. Ring the company and say, send me a true bill and I'll settle the true bill, because they only send statements in the mail, because they're only allowed to send statements because they've already been paid and they're double dipping. And this is why we are perpetuating the national debt. Every time you pay with fiat currency, anything, you are compounding the national debt, guys. Do not be a party to fraud. Everything I did was separate from fraud. Everything.
What were the fines for?
Just traffic fines. Doing commerce. Yeah, and besides, we don't have a government.
Just remember that.
Friends, we do not have a government. It's all corporate owned. There's a difference between a policeman and woman who serves to protect, who swore to serve and protect, and another creature called a police officer. They serve for profit. And who sends them to get those little promissory notes and negotiable instruments? The banksters.
You go to me. Hello. I wanted to share with you SANTOS BONACCI. If you might have noticed with Michael Tellinger's video, I think that was 2014. You know, there was a lot of truth movements that happened in 2006 and about 2014. SANTOS, he was charged with excessive fines and all that stuff, taken to court, and within less than 24 hours he was out of jail, paid his fines off with a promissory note. And not only that, like Michael Tellinger, they continue to pay off their estates with promissory notes because the banking system is totally fraud. Not only that, I want to highlight a few other people that have came out over the last few years. There's a guy in I think it's Sweden or Norway, Mads Palvis, Mads Pilvas. He was actually working for the bank, tried to change the system, and basically he was pushed out. So he went public with it all. He's now running to become the next president or prime minister of that country, try and actually change the laws, change things, because it needs to happen at a law level, not what it is. And this is exactly what Michael Tellinger told everybody in 2014. He even showed that the only way to play their game now, to break their system, or to keep yourself an honest individual, is to work their system their way. And not only that, if you have a look at the website commonlawcourt.com, which is actually clc.com, if you look there, you can read all this stuff. This is not something that I'm making up. This is something that thousands of people are doing. And my fear, my reason for making today's video is they're speaking about this bubble that's going to continue to go for the housing stuff. How many people are actually going to be faced with the streets, you know? And you have to learn these things so that we walk in righteousness. Otherwise, we're just playing the game and feeding the snake eating its own tail. I mean, Dane Wigington says these kind of things as well. Well, guys, look, I only do these videos because I love you all dearly and I pray for the world to change. You know, as Rex has been saying for years, be the change you all want to see. I love you dearly. If you wish to support our channel, links are in the description. All donations are welcome. I read all comments. I appreciate everything. Keep being the change we all hope to see, guys. And love and blessings from Scotland. Have a nice day. I needed to throw a passage at you just to help with today's video. So stay with me a second. I'll start it here. It speaks in Hosea 4:6, and I'll start at 5. Therefore shalt thou fall in the day, and the prophet also shall fall with thee in the night. And I will destroy thy mother. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Because thou hast rejected knowledge, I will also reject thee. Thou shalt be no priest to me, seeing thou hast forgotten the law of thy God. I will also forget thy children. As they were increased, so they sinned against me. Therefore will I charge their glory into shame. They eat up the sin of my people, and they set their hearts on their iniquity. Now, just to come back and tap into today's episode, it's all about promissory notes. It's all about the usury, which was abolished out of the temple, which is why a lot of the ancient laws are trying to be hidden from everyone, because everything was given. There's no need for what you think debt is. So guys, enjoy today's episode. God bless you all. I make these things because I love you all dearly. Thank you.